Revealed, the incredible moment when one curvy woman changed a billionaire's heart forever. Sarah's hands trembled as she wiped down the countertop at the diner, each stroke echoing her frantic thoughts. She was exhausted from the back-to-back shifts, yet her worries spun like a cyclone in her mind. Bills piled up with the same relentless force as the wind whistling outside. Ethan needed school supplies, and a new pair of shoes for the fall. Life had grown so heavy since her husband left, each day a struggle against an unseen tide. Could she be both a mother and an artist in this town that barely left room for dreams? How could she chase her passion for painting while scraping together enough to put food on the table? Blake's sudden arrival in Maplewood felt like a storm front rolling in, his plans for the new facility threatening to drown her quaint little town in waves of change. She clenched her jaw as she recalled the meetings, the outsider's slick smile while promising jobs. But at what cost? The locals saw him as a savior, she saw the potential for destruction. The part of her that had grown accustomed to the struggle a fiery side protested against his arrogance, the way he dismissed the people she knew and loved. It clawed at her heart, stirring anger and a sense of desperation. Then there was her art, pushed further into the corner of the cramped apartment, almost as if it were an unwanted guest. Each time she picked up a brush, shadows of guilt crept in. It seemed selfish to pursue her passion when Ethan needed a stable future. Can I really justify any of this? Wasn't it wrong to keep dreaming when reality hung like a leaden cloud? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the clock ticked on, a sense of urgency tightened in her chest. Ethan deserved more. He was pure potential, bubbling with ideas and dreams. Could she let go of her dreams to secure his? The images flashed in her mind, his innocent face when she finally revealed her latest painting, the joy in his eyes, untainted by the harshness of adult worries. But would her artistic ambitions crush him, encasing them both in disappointment? The weight of responsibility bore down on her like a lead anchor, forcing her to question everything she held dear. In that moment, the fundraiser loomed closer, and her stomach twisted more than any fry cook's grease splatter. The thought of facing Blake again ignited a surge of anger, yet underneath it lay undeniable curiosity. Confronting him at the event would be no small feat. There was a flicker of hope, however, that she could ignite change with her words, her art a chance to be seen, to be recognized beyond her everyday roles. A mental collision took hold as her internal chaos reached a height where nothing felt resolved. It paralyzed her. Should she protect her small world, or should she dare to challenge a man who could reshape it? Could she confront Blake, risk everything she worked so hard to build? The answer hung in the balance like the air before a storm, and somewhere deep within, potential for connection flickered against the coldness of ambition. With a thread of determination weaving itself into her thoughts, Sarah stood at the precipice of a moment that could irrevocably change both of their lives. Would she take the plunge? The uncertainty crackled like electricity, leaving her breathless and waiting for the storm to break. As the final shift of the day dragged on, Sarah found herself battling a familiar feeling, the weariness that accompanied her every long day at the diner. The clinks of dishes and bubbling of the fryers felt like a backdrop to the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Today, though, was different. She could feel the electric charge of opportunity thrumming in her veins, urging her to embrace the confrontation she had been avoiding. The clock ticked mercilessly towards the end of her shift, yet time felt both an enemy and an ally. Each second she spent here felt like a countdown, building the pressure for the moment she would finally face Blake. She could almost envision it, the moment her voice would cut through the facade of his confidence, striking at the heart of his grand plans for Maplewood. Would her words resonate, or would they be swept away like leaves in a gale? Her heart pounded as she recalled the hazy, imperfect outlines of her paintings. Just the thought of them ignited a flicker of hope. Each stroke she imagined could tell a story, weave a narrative that emerged from the chaos of her life. They were not mere splashes of color but fragments of her identity yearning to be acknowledged. The visceral pull of her artistry warred with the never-ending list of responsibilities and aspirations she held for Ethan. As she finished scrubbing the last table, she caught her reflection in the faded window by the diner's entrance. It was time. Her hands, once trembling with fear, steadied as she resolved to put aside her insecurities, transmuting anxiety into purpose. Sarah recalled the words she had often whispered to herself when the weight of motherhood felt like too much: she was enough. Not just for Ethan but for herself. She had a voice worth sharing, a story worth telling, and tonight, she was determined to claim it. That initial flicker of determination grew into a flame as she made her way home. In each step, she pictured her canvases, alive and pulsing with color. The idea of sharing her art at the fundraiser evolved into something bigger than validation. It became about creating a dialogue, an opportunity to stand up for her community while staking her claim as an artist. But with each stride, the memory of Blake's dismissive demeanor swept over her, stirring her anger and resolve in equal measure. He represented not only a dangerous change for Maplewood but also the societal pressures that dismissed women's ambitions. She envisioned confronting him not with hostility, but with a passionate plea rooted in her truth. Sarah could call upon the emotions swirling within her to challenge the assumptions he flung about so casually. That thought ignited a fire, a clarity that blasted through her initial uncertainty. If she could simply express her love for her art and the people affected by his plans, perhaps she could carve out a space for both her dreams and those of the townsfolk. An unexpected thrill surged through her as the possibility ignited new aspirations, intertwining her relationship with her identity as both a mother and an artist. The burden of doubt began to lift, exposing glimmers of self-assurance she hadn't known existed. This fundraiser wouldn't just be another night filled with idle chit-chat. This would be her platform, her moment to disrupt the narrative that had dominated her life for far too long. Arriving home, she stood before her easel, the blank canvas awaiting her touch. With a breath steadying her resolve, she grabbed a brush. The time had come to put her fears into the strokes of her art. In that moment, she wasn't just painting, she was preparing to paint her future, but as she dipped her brush into the paint, uncertainty flickered in the back of her mind. Could her passion withstand the storm that awaited her? The thought hung heavy, pressing on her conscience like an unseen weight threatening to crush her burgeoning confidence. Would she finally find the strength to confront Blake and proclaim her truth? The answer loomed just out of reach, sending a shiver of anticipation down her spine as the sky outside darkened, mirroring the turmoil within. Sarah stood before her easel, brush poised and trembling slightly. The vibrant colors laid out before her beckoned, each hue a promise of transformation. Yet, as she dipped the brush into deep cerulean, her mind swirled with an internal tempest, reminding her of the confrontation that loomed. Her heart wrestled between excitement and an old, familiar fear. What if she didn't have what it took to make her voice heard? With each stroke, she painted not just another scene but stitched together fragments of uncertain identity. Vivid sweeps of blue turned into a sky ablaze with dawn. Just as dawn promises a new day, here she was, balancing her identity as a mother and an artist while fighting the very real storms threatening her vision, a daunting echo of self-doubt and external dismissal. She stepped back, observing the canvas. In it, she saw a reflection of her own struggle. There was chaos but also beauty, a wild explosion of colors that could spark something within the heart of Maplewood's tumultuous discourse. The image began to crystallize, distilling her anxieties and ambition into a powerful narrative that could resonate beyond her own canvas. Every flick of her brush transformed the canvas into a stage, her thoughts taking physical form. She envisioned the fundraiser, a swirling cacophony of voices, laughter, and perhaps dissent. Most importantly, she envisioned Blake cold, calculating, and dismissive. Her heart pounded at the thought of his reaction. Would he alleviate the fears she sensed within the community, or would he become a monumental wall she must break through? The very thought filled her with both dread and adrenaline. She was no longer simply a mother making ends meet, she felt the evolving identity of an artist with a voice, one that could reshape the narrative of Maplewood. Sarah decided she wouldn't just confront Blake in words but in spirit. She would paint a story that resonated with her audience. No longer would she allow her future to be dictated by someone else's vision. The reality of her authority as an artist began to bloom, stark against the backdrop of hesitation. The vision of confronting Blake fueled her. This was not merely a fight, it was liberation. Each brushstroke infused with conviction, she began to understand, creativity must reflect her deepest truths, not just the echoes of the societal mold she'd been given. As the night drew on, the canvas spoke back to her, echoing the journey of resilience. Each color became a channel through which her underlying aspirations roared. The shadows of self-doubt were transformed into bold statements of intent, a promise of fulfillment waiting to be embraced. Tomorrow, she would be more than just a woman. She would be an artist, stepping boldly into her narrative. Just as she finished the last detail of her artwork, an almost suffocating sense of urgency settled in. The time for half measures had passed, there was clarity in her purpose now. She was ready to challenge Blake not as a source of anger, but as an artist armed with the fire of her truth. With this realization, she felt the heavy sense of impending confrontation shift within her. Tomorrow would be the day she unearthed the power within herself and met the storm head-on, but as she turned to put her brushes away, a nagging thought pierced through her newfound confidence. Would Blake's response unravel all her plans, or ignite a spark that could redefine both of their paths? The lingering uncertainty loomed, and the very question sat heavily in the air, demanding a resolution she was not yet prepared to face. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting gentle rays across Sarah's canvas. As she stood before it, she could still feel the pulse of the night's revelations coursing through her. Today was not just another day, it was a turning point, an uncharted territory where she would navigate her role not just as a mother or a worker, but as an artist intent on communication and connection. She examined the details of her painting, the vibrant blues swirling around the foreground and giving life to the sky. It felt as though her emotions danced on the surface. Every brushstroke represented a choice, a decision made toward embracing her full self. What had once seemed like chaos transformed into evocative scenes, relatable complexities that evoked empathy. She considered how these manifestations of her interior world could provide a gateway for others, a lens through which they might examine their own struggles. Yet, beneath the layers of color, cracks of self-doubt threatened to creep back in. What if her vision wasn't understood? What if Blake dismissed her work outright? The impending encounter loomed large, but instead of crumbling under the weight of it, she began nurturing a quiet resolve. This was not just about confronting him, it was about embodying her own journey as an artist. She would express her authenticity, her vulnerabilities wrapped in the aesthetics of her truth. With purpose, she set about refining her masterpiece, adjusting tiny elements here and there, a flick of a brush here, a strengthening line there. Each adjustment felt like preparation, honing her voice to be as clear and powerful as it could be. She began to compose a mental script for speaking with Blake, foreseeing interactions in which he might challenge her. Art is a subjective experience, she rehearsed quietly, envisioning his sardonic smile. But it's also deeply personal. This is not just a painting, it's my story, the intersections of pain, hope, and resilience. She challenged herself to push her boundaries further. What if she opened the conversation? What if she engaged him not as an adversary but as a potential ally, someone who could glimpse what might be possible with collaboration? As she packed her supplies, a wave of determination washed over her. It was time to redefine how she perceived her own narrative. She wouldn't simply respond to Blake, she would provoke thought, elicit emotion, and stand unapologetically as an artist. These were factors he had yet to understand. The essence of the art experience often began in uncharted emotional territories. Arriving at the venue was surreal. It pulsed with energy, a mixture of chatter and laughter that made her stomach flutter. Yet there was also an underlying tension. She could feel the community's scrutiny, their expectations weighing down on her like a lead cloak. Sarah took a deep breath, noticing her heartbeat as a drum beneath it all, a reminder that fear and excitement could coexist. With her artwork displayed, she positioned herself between the guests and her creation, a mediator of emotions. This was at the moment when she would stand in her truth. And then she saw him across the room, Blake's confident stride carving a path toward her. This was the confrontation she had prepared for, but she felt a spark of unexpected anticipation. As he approached, part of her braced for the inevitable challenge, yet another part yearned for genuine dialogue. Would he see beyond his stoicism? Would he acknowledge the expressive power of her work? The time had come to redefine perceptions not just for him, but for herself. She would respond to his expectations, not to be confined by them, but to shape a reality where her voice rang clear. The thrill of the encounter surged within her. "Are you ready for this?" she thought. The unspoken question hung in the air, waiting for a response. In that moment, everything pivoted on the potential of what they could create together, or what they might force each other to confront. What lay ahead remained uncertain, yet Sarah stood her ground, ready her artistic journey transcending both her fears and ambitions. Would this be a moment of connection, or something far more disruptive in discovering truths hidden within? As Blake neared her, Sarah could see the play of emotions dance across his features, a mixture of curiosity laced with skepticism. He scrutinized her painting, his gaze sharp as a hawk's, dissecting every twist of color, every stroke that told her story. For a fleeting moment, doubt threatened to seep back into her mind, but she pushed it aside, anchoring herself in the conviction of her vision. This was her moment. "Nice use of color," he began, his tone flat, but she detected a hint of intrigue beneath the surface. The challenge was on. Would he somehow manage to diminish her work, to reduce her world to mere technicalities? "Thank you," she replied, choosing to maintain the softness in her voice. It was time to engage, to make the first move in this unspoken dialogue. But it's not just about color. It's about the emotion behind it. Each shade represents a part of my journey, my narrative. He raised an eyebrow, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored shirt, a gesture that mirrored the tightness in his demeanor. "So you are saying this represents you? Really?" The question hung, tauntingly ambiguous. Was it incredulity or genuine intrigue? Digging deeper, Sarah decided she would not allow herself to be stonewalled. A subtle fire ignited in her stomach, propelling her forward. "Yes, Blake. It represents the struggle, the hope, the full spectrum of human experience." She took a step closer to him, the distance closing like the gap between understanding and dismissal. "Art isn't just for others, it's a reflection of who we are. For me, it became a lifeline when I felt fragmented." His expression shifted slightly. The curiosity flickered, perhaps mingling with vulnerability. "That's quite a statement. What's yours?" she pressed, rising to the challenge. "What drives you? Your accolades are impressive, Blake, but what lies beneath? What pieces of you remain unexpressed?" The question struck like a lightning bolt. He hesitated. For a split second, she felt herself sway, caught between fear of his possible rejection and the exhilaration of unveiling raw truths. Finding that personal connection in the midst of this preordained duel would be the ultimate victory. "Art is different for me," he finally replied, his confidence wavering. "It's transactional. I've never understood the emotional component people rave about. It's empty." She interjected, challenging him, feeling a rhythm build between them. "Or simply uncharted? Have you ever considered that your own experiences could inform your understanding of creativity and expression?" The spark of their exchange ignited more than philosophical banter. It became a raw confrontation of beliefs, each word a brushstroke painting the complexity of their perceived realities. With each step back he took from his guarded persona, the more she felt herself emerge the artist unafraid of color and depth. Blake opened his mouth to respond, but the crowd began to shift, sensing the tension, and she could feel eyes upon her. This was her chance, to shift not just his perspective, but also to confirm her place in this world: an artist, a storyteller. "Blake, your perspective is valid, but what if you allowed yourself to embrace the chaos of emotion? What if you stepped beyond your defined parameters and permitted the unpredictable to inform your life?" A charged silence followed. Those around them watched, ears tuned to their confrontation. Sarah held her breath, aware of their rapt attention, but it was an exhilarating feeling. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a revelation. She was no longer merely exhibiting her art, she was performing her identity, standing raw and unfiltered before him, exposing the vulnerable dimensions of her internal universe. Blake's response formed on his lips, but before he could articulate it, Sarah's heart pounded in rhythm to unspoken possibilities that lay in wait. The moment lingered, suspended in time, electrifying in its potential. Their interaction could reshape everything: herself, her art, and even Blake's fortified world. Would they bridge the gap, or were they destined to remain disparate worlds forever? A new pulse stirred within her, she sensed the beat of evolution. She had thrown an invitation into the chasm of their encounter, but what would arise from this moment of reckoning? As she awaited his reply, the world around them blurred, her heart racing at the thought of what could be. Blake's silence stretched out, thick like a fog that enveloped them both. Sarah felt a surge of anticipation mixed with anxiety, craving his acknowledgement yet fearing the weight of his thoughts. The crowd around them began to shift awkwardly, sensing the unspoken dance of conflict and possibility, but she remained anchored, committed to the exchange. Finally, he took a breath, a deep, shuddering inhale that spoke volumes of apprehension and contemplation. "Maybe I've shielded myself from the mess of emotions," he admitted, the words tumbling out hesitantly, as if they were foreign to him. "But why should I care? What's the point?" At that moment, she felt an unexpected crack in his armor. Here was a man who flaunted success yet stood naked before the vulnerability of self-examination. It was a pivotal opening, and Sarah knew it was vital to step through it. Because, Blake, that's where life flourishes. Emotions are not just chaos, they're catalysts for change. Without them, we risk living in monochrome. Are you really content with that? His eyes narrowed, wrestling with both curiosity and suspicion. So you think tapping into emotion would change everything for me? Not just for you, for anyone. Sarah looked deeply into his eyes, prepared to witness his defenses crumble. People live for connection, they crave understanding. When we allow ourselves to feel deeply, we give others the permission to do the same. It opens doors. It sparks creativity. The intensity of her convictions pierced through his guarded demeanor, and for the first time, she saw him blurring the lines of skepticism. But what if I can't? What if there are pieces I don't want to uncover? His voice was barely above a whisper, revealing the cracks within his masterpiece of control. Then we start there. We uncover together, she offered, brimming with determination. The moment held the potential to forge both her artistic identity and his as a multifaceted human. She took a step closer, lowering her voice as if the atmosphere demanded secrecy. You said art is transactional. What if we reframed it as a dialogue? A collaboration? You could find meaning in the chaos. Blake's brow furrowed, the gears of his mind visibly churning. She could see something new glimmering within him, a fragile hope interlacing with doubt. It was the tension of uncharted territory, and she felt the thrill rush through her veins. Do you think it's possible to break free from years of conditioning? He questioned, his tone tinged with a mix of desperation and intrigue. That's exactly what it takes, an act of courage, Sarah insisted, her heart steady with assurance. It's not easy to peel back the layers, but it's necessary if you want to live authentically. His gaze softened, a flash of vulnerability passing through before he tightened the reins again. And what if doing that would ruin what I've built? What if it leads to disappointment? Then you learn, she replied firmly, unexpectedly drawing strength from her own resounding belief. Disappointment is just another brushstroke in your canvas. Each misstep is a lesson, a part of your evolution. If you risk nothing, you remain precisely what you've always been: untouched, unyielding. Blake fell silent, his gaze a tempest of conflicted emotions. The other voices in the gallery began to fade, their presence reduced to mere background noise. In that charged air, Sarah stood before him, no longer just the artist but the embodiment of her philosophy, raw, exposed, refusing to retreat. Maybe I should try, he said finally, his words barely a whisper. That a budding alliance formed between them, a connection sparking like flint against steel. Sarah felt exhilaration bloom, she, too, was on the cusp of change. Their conversation was merely the start, but the seed had been planted. As she became more aware of the world around them, a steely resolve began to weave its way through her thoughts. Could she really guide him into the depths of this new emotional terrain? The answer was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. "Then let us begin," she said softly, her voice warm. Electric, charged with promise. As she prepared to take that next step, a newfound determination surged within her, driven by the pulse of creativity and connection. She realized that this wasn't merely about Blake's journey, it was about hers as well, and how art could be both a mirror and a bridge. But as their exchange focused on transformation, something flickered in Blake's expression, a storm of emotions that hinted at dark corners yet unexplored. What was it that lay beneath the surface, waiting to be exposed? And with that question held close, she felt both excitement and trepidation for what came next. As they stood in that hushed gallery, the weight of what lay ahead pressed against Sarah like a physical presence. She could sense Blake's internal struggle, the conflicting waves of desire for change and dread of revelation crashing against each other within him. It represented not only the beginning of a partnership but also a navigational challenge, one that would draw them both into the deep, uncharted waters of vulnerability. "Let us explore what you're feeling right now," she suggested, her voice steady but soft, coaxing his defenses to lower further. "What is going on in that head of yours?" Blake's brow creased further, and for the first time, his rawness became palpable. "It's just, what if this leads to nothing? What if I unearth something that doesn't fit my narrative? What if it destabilizes everything?" The question hung in the air, charged with gravity. Sarah nodded slowly, absorbing the anxiety woven through his words. "But what about what it may give you? What if you find a deeper purpose or unexpected joy?" She watched his face flicker with uncertainty, the shadows of doubt contending with the light of possibilities. He looked away, scanning the nearby exhibits, searching for solace in art. "I have built a life around control. My successes are tangible, measurable. They're safe. Emotions, they're abstract. What if I can't handle what comes next?" The truth settled heavily between them. She considered his framed existence a man who thrived on perfection and predictability. Her own heart raced. How could she encourage him to break free from this gilded cage without overwhelming him? "What if we take it piece by piece? No rush. Just a step toward understanding what lies beneath," she offered, her own voice quaking with earnestness. "Piece by piece." He echoed her words like a mantra, testing the rhythm. She watched as he fought the instinct to reel back, the way he opened slightly, just a crack, inviting the light in. "Let us start with something simple then," she suggested, thinking quickly. "What's a moment that stands out for you? A memory where emotions took you by surprise?" "A surprise?" He pondered the question. "Most of my memories are muted. They were polite yet distant." "Polite but distant," she murmured, realizing the profound layers of his history. She felt a tug of sorrow and determination. To draw out the beautiful complexity buried within him was no small feat. "Then let us imagine a scenario. Think about a time where feeling invaded your control. What did that stir in you?" He remained silent, his gaze distant, a man wrestling with fragments of a memory he had thought long buried. Sarah sensed the weight pressing in on them. Yet, she also felt an undercurrent of resolve swell. Engaging Blake meant confronting years of guardedness, but the reward could reshape his life entirely. Finally, a story emerged from his lips, hesitantly at first. "There was a time I lost a client, a big one. It felt like everything I built was crumbling. I went home, and I stood in front of my collection of art. I felt angry, sick with disappointment. It broke the dam I didn't even know existed." What happened next? This time there was no hesitation, a spark of excitement igniting within him. "I painted all night. I didn't care about the outcome, I just poured everything out. The rage, the confusion. And the following morning, I woke and saw beauty. It was raw, chaotic, but it resonated." A beat passed before Sarah responded, her heart swelling. "Blake, that's it. You found meaning amidst chaos. That was a breakthrough. He met her eyes, slowly beginning to understand the depth of his own experience. I hadn't considered it that way before. This is the path we can explore together, she encouraged, her own pulse quickening at the awakening potential within him. You've got everything it takes beneath the surface. Underneath their budding alliance lay a dimension that both thrilled and terrified her. She realized this wasn't just about Blake's unearthing. The more he confronted his complexities, the more her own journey as an artist entwined with his. As they embarked on this quest for authenticity, she could already feel the transformative force of creativity stirring in tandem, but just as their connection began to deepen, an unexpected wave of apprehension washed over her. Were they equipped to handle the shadows that awaited? And as she pondered this question, she felt the pulse of their nascent commitment thrumming through her, a blend of anticipation and uncertainty. The convergence of their journeys was only just beginning, and the next step was fraught with potential pitfalls and sudden revelations. Would the next endeavor forge deeper ties, or would it fracture them both irrevocably? As the echoes of their last exchange faded, Blake's expression morphed into a mask of contemplation. He seemed to traverse some hidden labyrinth of thought, and for Sarah, the gallery felt as if it were closing in around them. The flickers of the lights above, once invigorating, now pulsed syncopated with the rhythm of her heart, each beat underscoring the tension hanging heavy in the air. Why do you think art stirred me so deeply that night? Blake asked, breaking the silence. His eyes were shadowed, grappling with the weight of his recent revelation. I mean, it's just paint on canvas. The paint is a vehicle for your emotions. It's a way to communicate what your words fail to express, Sarah replied, her voice steady. Art has a way of placing us in a space where we confront our imperfections, our chaos. She leaned in, wanting him to feel her sincerity. It can be like a mirror reflecting parts of ourselves, sometimes the parts we hide away the most. Blake absorbed her words, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Maybe, he mused, a faint glimmer sparking in his eyes. But how do I make sense of what's beneath the surface? The chaos feels overwhelming. By continuing to explore it like you did that night, Sarah encouraged gently. You have already shown you can craft something beautiful from your turmoil. Embrace that process. He shifted, his brow furrowing as doubt flickered across his face. You don't understand. There are parts of my life that I fear are irretrievable. Can I even dive back into those memories and extract meaning? The fear in his voice sent an unexpected wave of empathy through Sarah. Their connection was fragile yet daring, as she leaned into her own vulnerabilities, wanting to be a guiding light. We don't have to solve everything at once. Let us dismantle it piece by piece, like you said. Each discovery can lead to deeper understanding, but you have to be willing to dig. Digging, he repeated, half laughing but intrigued. I suppose that's not a terrible start. Her heart lifted slightly, sensing a spark of determination flicker under his facade. Let us build on that. Imagine we could explore one memory together, one that encapsulates a turning point in your life. A moment that made you who you are today. He hesitated, closed his eyes as if searching the inner landscape of his experiences. There was a time during college. I had a professor who believed in my potential. I didn't see it then, but he encouraged me to push boundaries in my painting. There was an exhibit, and I showed my work after he convinced me I was terrified. What did you feel standing there, exposed before others? Sarah interjected, her anticipation mounting. I felt small but also exhilarated, he confessed, vulnerability creeping into his voice. When people began to engage with my work, they were moved. It felt transformative but also terrifying, like stepping into a light I didn't recognize. See? You've already had experiences that broke you open, she noted, excitement pushing her words forward. Those moments are crucial for you to reclaim. They represent your courage, the willingness to be seen. He nodded slowly, as if testing the resonance of her insights. But what if I can't recapture that light? What if exploring those memories only brings discomfort? There's beauty in discomfort, Sarah replied. It can lead to growth. Think of it as a bruise. Over time, it can heal and become a part of who you are, but it has to be acknowledged first. It's all about accessing those feelings without fear. The realization hung heavily in the air, their destinies once again intertwined in this intricate dance of bravery and self-discovery. As they exchanged charged glances, Sarah felt the stakes rising, lifting them both into a new realm of possibility. Yet, as they edged closer to this pivotal exploration, a tension began to hum beneath the surface, as if the journey itself were a double-edged sword offering revelation, while threatening to slice through their fragile rapport. Could they uncover and embrace the truths hidden in the shadows without losing what they had begun to build together? As those thoughts washed over Sarah, she knew the ground underfoot was unstable. They were poised on the precipice of revelation, the next steps churning with both potential and risk. In that moment of uncertainty, an unexpected phone call broke the silence, vibrating through the pocket of Blake's coat. They both froze, the weight of their shared exploration hanging palpably in the air. Keeping her eyes on him, Sarah felt her heart quicken. What could this disruption mean? Would it derail their momentum, or open an unforeseen door into his world that he hadn't been ready to face? Blake's hand moved instinctively to his pocket, fingers brushing against the phone that accompanied his existence in an ever-connected world. Hesitation painted his features as he glanced at Sarah, his expression a mixture of surprise and dread. The call persisted, demanding attention but standing in direct opposition to their fragile moment of connection. "Do you want to answer it?" Sarah asked softly, the tension palpable between them. She searched his gaze for a clue about the importance of the call, sensing the shadows in his body language. He shook his head slowly, torn between duty and desire. The moment felt charged, like static electricity crackling in the air. Blake's need to confront his past loomed larger than the other demands of his present life, but that persistent ring laced his hesitation with anxiety. "What if it's urgent?" she pressed gently. His jaw tightened as he wrestled with the decision, the struggle between vulnerability and obligation conducting a dissonant symphony in his mind. Each ring of the phone echoed like a heartbeat, marking the rhythm of his internal conflict. "It's probably just work," he finally muttered, but the line of his mouth betrayed him, a hint of fear creeping in. "Then let us focus on what matters right now," Sarah encouraged, her voice a lifeline. She reached out and placed her hand on his arm, a gesture of grounding that seemed to momentarily ease his turmoil. With a deep breath, Blake pushed the phone aside, wrestling down the inevitable guilt that accompanied his choice. "I need to," he faltered, the words hanging unspoken. "I need to explore this further." The recognition in her eyes propelled him forward. "Tell me about that moment in college again. What was it like for you to finally put your work out there?" As he explored his memory, the apprehension that had accompanied the phone call began to fade, replaced by the anxiety of nostalgia. "I remember the fear distinctly. I felt exposed, like all the pieces of my life were laid bare. But as people started to engage, it shifted." His voice deepened, each word resonating with the truth of his experience. "There was this moment when a stranger just stood there, totally transfixed by my painting, and it was as if they were seeing me for the first time." Sarah leaned closer, entranced by the passion illuminating his eyes. "What did you learn from that moment?" Blake's gaze intensified, as if unearthing layers of realization. "I learned that I could make someone feel something profound. My work didn't just represent me, it connected me to others. I craved that sense of belonging, that recognition." "Then why stop?" she challenged gently. "You have the power to evoke feelings through your art. Why not start exploring that connection again? You seemed to thrive in vulnerability back then." The tension shifted, ambiguity replaced with determination. "Because I obscured who I was after that. I let fear build walls, convincing myself that the world didn't want to see me." A new intensity ignited in Sarah. "But now you have the chance to break those walls down. The call can wait." This she gestured between them, "This is your moment to reclaim that light. What if from this point on, you embraced being seen?" Blake's eyes widened, realization dawning on him. He was standing at a precipice, not just of memory, but of choice. He could either allow that call to pull him back into the shadows or take a leap of faith into the unknown, emerging with a renewed sense of purpose. But as he drew in a breath, the phone vibrated on the table beside him, a striking reminder that his past was still clawing at the fringes of his newfound resolve. Their gazes locked, challenging each other to remain in this moment of connection instead of succumbing to external pressures. With every passing second, the tension thickened, leaving questions buzzing in the ambient air. Would he truly embrace this moment of vulnerability, or would the shadows of obligation dim the light of discovery once more? Sarah's heartbeat echoed in her ears as she awaited his next move, the stakes just raised. Higher. A new opportunity beckoned, but would he seize it, or succumb once again to the calls of the past? In the stillness of that moment, Sarah felt the weight of destiny resting on Blake's shoulders. The phone buzzed insistently, but amidst the disruption, she sensed something deeper unfolding. This was a defining crossroads, not just for him but for both of them, where their journeys entwined in a dance of vulnerability and audacity. Blake's brow furrowed, the conflict palpable as he fought between duty and the magnetic pull of self-discovery. Sarah's heart raced, echoing with the intensity of their dialogue. "Are you going to let fear decide your fate again?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with warmth. His eyes reflected a cocktail of emotions: resistance, fear, and a burgeoning flicker of determination. A sudden resolve surged within him. "No," he said, his voice low but steady. "I won't let this moment slip away." With a definitive motion, he silenced the phone, casting it aside. Her heart soared at his affirmation. He was choosing to break free from the invisible chains that had held him captive for so long. The air seemed to shift as Blake focused his attention solely on her. "You're right. I've spent too long cloaked in control. I've let my past dictate who I am today." His voice carried a newfound strength, a resonance she had long awaited. "This is it. I'm ready to rediscover that part of me that embraced chaos through creativity." "Embrace the chaos," Sarah repeated softly, feeling the gravity of the moment. The crowd around them was mere background noise now, their shared sincerity uniting them in a palpable connection. "Let us explore your journey. Tell me more about that first exhibit. What did it mean for you?" She felt it a seamless merging of their aspirations for authenticity, igniting a pathway to a shared future steeped in every hue of their own narratives. That he took a breath, and she could see the emotional bridge being built within him. "I remember feeling brave, yet terrified. I was stepping into a world that felt foreign yet promising." He traced the lines of his memory with words, recalling each sensation vividly. "It was liberating to present my work. It was like unveiling hidden pieces of myself. I lit up, invigorated not just by the art but by how it touched others." "Exactly," Sarah encouraged, a smile creeping onto her face. "You allow people to walk through your experiences, to feel connected and seen. It's about embracing those feelings, the uncertainty, the excitement. How could you explore that again?" The light between them began to shine brighter, an embodiment of shared purpose. Blake looked uncertain for a heartbeat before a deepening resolve solidified within his gaze. "I could partner with you, Sarah. Your art tells stories that resonate. We could create something that challenges the status quo, something beautiful born from our journeys. And we could show everyone that rawness and authenticity have a place in our community," Sarah replied, each word punctuated by exhilaration. The tension that had once encumbered them became palpable energy, thickening in the air. "I want to showcase both our experiences, our vulnerabilities," Blake continued, his eagerness palpable, revealing layers of ambition and willingness to embrace his truth. "Together we could lead a new conversation." Sarah's heart sang at the evolving partnership blossoming before her. She had wanted to paint her story, now she could co-create a masterpiece with Blake that reflected their mutual transformation. The notion of collaboration lingered in the air, an electric charge building between them. "This could spark change, Blake. It's more than art, it's a challenge to societal norms. We can elevate the value of vulnerability and authenticity." Let us do it. The conviction in his voice filled her with an overwhelming sense of validation. Days turned into weeks as they delved into this collaborative venture, their passion igniting a creative fire that transcended beyond mere colors on canvas. They hosted workshops, using art as a medium for community engagement, inviting others to explore their stories and emotions through painting. The gallery where they first confronted each other glowed with their collective work. Their exhibit unveiled transitory pieces, honest portrayals of hardships and triumphs. Each artwork was a negotiating space for connection, inviting admiration and introspection. On the night of the exhibit opening, Sarah stood in front of the vibrant piece that took shape through her and Blake's eccentric collaboration. The rainbow of emotions unfolded in strokes all around her, the conversations they sparked wove a fabric of new narratives within their walls. Blake joined her, his eyes reflecting the pride of their accomplishments. "We did it, Sarah," he whispered, a soft smile of fulfillment gracing his lips. From the moment they took that first leap of faith together, she had transformed not only as an artist but as a woman stepping fully into the boldness of her identity. "Look at what we've created, it's our legacy," she replied, her words imbued with gratitude. The once muted town of Maplewood reverberated with a newness, as if the colors of their combined truths breathed life into the stagnation. Sarah stood tall, embodying the artist she longed to be, confident, fulfilled, and fearless. As the crowd swelled, Sarah realized she had finally carved out space for her voice beyond motherhood. Each brushstroke had painted her truth and brought her full circle. She was not just an artist but a beacon for others, proving that dreams could merge seamlessly with motherhood because art, she learned, wasn't selfish, it was a lifeline. With this final realization, the chapter of her transformation closed with complete satisfaction. Blake turned to her, mirroring her conviction. They were no longer defined by their pasts but illuminated by their present, a brilliant synthesis of creativity and collaboration, illuminating a brighter future together. Now, embrace your own journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.